I'm sorry, what happened? Hold on, because I just started hitting record, and so this is the perfect start to the to the show. You were at an HOA meeting?
Oh, it's great. I love them. I actually
That's
I don't mind HOA meetings because I think they're really interesting. And
yeah,
I don't have a role on the board or anything like that, but just seeing how your money is spent, even our HOA is like $230 a year. It's nothing,
right.
but it's still, I
Yeah,
think it's fascinating.
I always hear like nightmare stories from I feel like the HOA is like the Toby, like the HR of
Yes.
the neighborhood. I don't. It's like a faceless person for the most part. Like for me, because I don't, I'm not an HOA board. But I always just hear bad things like they won't let's park our cars in the yard. So
Yeah, ours is like the most basic thing in the world because it's basically just keep the front area mowed and clean, and
yeah.
that's essentially it. And do the bookkeeping, and that's it. But it's
The
interesting.
bookkeeping. I like that.
Yeah,
All right. Speaking of bookkeeping, we are it's the second to last one. I didn't realize this is like the important one
yeah, oh yeah.
going into tonight. So they were, because like some of these other ones they've just kind of cruised into and out of. But the committee, I'm fully on board with here. There we go. Can you see the comments over here?
What we got?
We got Ben Diesel and Eddie
Oh, there we
Booza in
go.
here.
Love it.
But yeah, so like I didn't realize that. And then we get into the actual like broadcast, and I'm firmly on board with something you said a while back, which is it kind of feels like the committee's just doing things to like for the entertainment value or like their own like like they're protecting themselves down the road like for
Yeah.
some of these like rankings like that's you saw Penn State tonight was like an 8, right? And so first and foremost, initial thoughts when you saw the rankings and specifically Oregon State at 15.
Oregon State's hot, man. Jonathan
They're
Smith, like national
good.
coach of the year. They're good, man. They're really good. Helps when
Dude, the
Dan Lanning
Pac-12
just
has
blows
6
Trump.
ranked teams.
I know. It is kind of crazy. I think the Pac-12 is good this year. Like if there's ever a year
Yeah.
for the Pac-12 to finally break through, this is it. I think USC is going to beat
Yeah.
Utah, my beloved Utah Utes. But yeah, I had the top 8 predicted how I thought it was going to go. I had LSU at 9, which I don't really know why I did that in hindsight. That was really dumb. Beefed
Well,
up
they
that
dropped
one.
them 9
Like
spots
4,
though. That was a lot.
yeah, which how do you feel about A&M if that's how far you're dropping LSU?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I thought it made perfect sense why they ranked definitely the top 5 the way that they did. With
Yeah.
having Georgia at the number 1 spot to hold off Michigan. And if your argument
Yeah.
is, well, Michigan beat Ohio State, it's the best win of anybody in college football, I would push back on that and say, well, Michigan only has 2 wins against the current top 25. Georgia's got 4 wins against the current top 25. Georgia
Right.
played 2 teams in non-conference play. Michigan, 2 Power 5 teams. Michigan played 0. None. Zilch.
Played
Not as many
UConn.
as you and I combined. Yeah. So I thought that was perfectly fine. Having USC at 4 after the way that they've been able to prove themselves on the stretch here makes perfect sense. Ohio State falling out of the top 4. They're no longer in control of their own destiny after a loss like that. And being ahead of Alabama, I thought still made sense.
Yeah,
And
for
we'll
sure.
disagree. I know we disagree with the Bama Tennessee stuff. So do you want to just get into that now?
Okay, so here's my only thing. It doesn't matter at all. Like Bama's not going to get in. I just think
But the
that
Sugar
like
Bowl.
who cares? Send Tennessee. I could care less about the like. I didn't realize that that's. I guess is that why they're. Do you think they're really up in arms about that, or is it that it's Bama Tennessee and it's also Bama getting the preferential treatment by being ahead of them?
Yeah, it's that. I think there is some pageantry with the Sugar Bowl compared to
Yeah,
random New Year's Six Bowl that you face maybe like the top group of 5 team or something like that. I think there's something to be said for that, but I think it's more the
yeah.
principle of just being ranked behind Bama when obviously Tennessee has the head to head. And if you look at some of the side by side stuff, you're like,
Yeah, the
I don't.
resume is still impressive from Tennessee.
It is. And here's why I don't like the Joe Milton Hendon Hooker thing. If you're saying like this is
Carlos
why they
Jones.
should be ranked here because of their quarterback, who it is right now. If we found out, just hear me out on this. Hear me out on this.
You're good.
If we found out this weekend that Ohio State for bowl season was going to get Jackson Smith and Jigba back, right? Let's say we found that out. Best receiver in college football coming into the year when healthy. I think we could say that.
Yeah.
Is that a fair thing to say?
I mean, Jermaine Burton's like balled out this year, so I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
Okay. So if that happened, Would Ohio State suddenly be worthy of the number 4 spot just because they get Jackson Smith and Jigba
So like
back?
reversing it.
Yeah, so if we're gonna use it in one
Okay.
way, but we're never gonna use it in the other, that's why I don't like
Right.
using that, and I would rather just go strictly based on the resume, and that's why I would give Tennessee the benefit of the doubt over Alabama.
So here's the precedent for it has already been set. It's set in the very first playoff when Cardell Jones was a third string quarterback and came in and started it, like, what's his name went down in the game against Michigan.
JT Barrett.
And like, yeah, so they go into the playoff after, like, they go into like the Big Ten championship, and like I think they had to win to get in. They won like 52-3 or something crazy. So there is a precedent for it. I will also argue that team was very different than this Tennessee team. They're also playing for like a national title to get into the playoff. But like putting them at 10 last week, they lost to an unranked team by by almost 4 scores, right? And I know that like
25, yeah.
Right. And so I know all of the like just flat out, if you're telling Tennessee you have to finish the year, you're going to get into the playoff if you beat Vandy, Kentucky. Yeah, Vandy, Kentucky. I'm sorry, Vandy, Mizzou, and South Carolina.
They blew it.
Would love that. They blew it, and they blew it. Like, again, with how strict people have been, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but your article was very, very strict with the way you were viewing and like assessing Bama, I think. And I know that I'm biased a little bit towards it. It was the one after the Ole Miss game. I was very upset. But I feel like people have kind of gone out of the way to keep pointing out, like, who's their quality win? It's probably the Texas win that by 1 point. They're just never going to get credit for most things, I feel like. But like they were not going to get credit for that win, the backup quarterback, whatever. You played 5 teams that were at some point ranked on the road. Texas is still 20th. And that whole thing about like they barely won this game. You know what they have? You know what they haven't done but one time in their last 113 games against unranked opponents is lose. And they lost by 3 points in that one. I just like going towards the end of the season. I'm not saying that Bama does not deserve to be in. I don't want them to be in. I don't want to see them lose to Georgia again. Like genuinely, I don't. Like, then they do not deserve to be in there. But putting them where they are now, I don't know who necessarily behind them besides Tennessee has a better resume. From a schedule standpoint.
I'm not really. Yeah, I think from that standpoint, I'm more okay with that. Like there are only 8 teams, I think. Was it 10? Maybe it's 10 teams that have 3 or fewer losses at the Power 5 level or something. Like the number is low right now. Like it's really, really low. Maybe it's less than that. I don't remember. But nonetheless, I was more so frustrated that Gary Danielson at the end of that game the other day, when he's talking about how they're going to watch Gary in the 4th quarter of that game, in which Bama scores the touchdown to cover minus 21.5, which I know you know about. Gary's talking about.
Well, I got it at 22. So,
oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Gary's like, the selection committee, when they make this decision 3 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now, it's like, Gary, they do this in 8 days. You idiot. Learn a thing about the playoff. And he's like saying they're going to look at that touchdown scored against Auburn, 5-6 Auburn, and that's going to help Alabama's resume. That's what got me fired up, was hearing that, and then hearing after the fact, like Jenny Dell asking Saban the question about their playoff chances and their playoff bid. You could tell Saban even had this moment of pause where he's like, "What the hell is she talking about?"
Yeah. Oh, he's been very open.
And then he answered the question as best he could.
Yeah. So again, like I think that. I was at the game, so I didn't hear any of that. But like, I totally understand how unimpressive that they've looked at times, because they don't look as good as they used to. But just flat out, and this is not me being biased. This is just, I feel like a factual thing. The like lens that people are looking through with this Bama team, I think, is more skewed than it's ever been. I think it's honestly like it's almost as bad as people think the bias is for Bama. The bias against them because of that, like out of like resentment, is escalated. So like the Ole Miss game, Ole Miss ranked 11th in the country, right? And all I heard was like, well, they barely won that game. It's like, but they won. They fucking won. Like, which sometimes was not like didn't seem to be the case. And I get the whole thing with Ewers being out, but man, like that A&M thing, the people have held that. David Pollock has held that like over Bama's head for like a while this year. And I never hear it mentioned that like they were missing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and their backup had 3 turnovers.
Yeah, it's the issue I have and why I would still put Tennessee above Bama is that besides the head to head is Bama
Yeah.
had 5 games that were decided in the last minute. Like
Oh,
they went
last
3 and
minute?
2 in the last minute, man. Yeah.
Wait,
That's
wait. Ole
think about it.
Miss, LSU, Tennessee. I feel like you're stretching the truth there. Texas. Oh
Mm-mm.
shit. Who's the other one?
Yeah.
Who's
That's
the other one? Oh, A&M.
A&M.
Oh my god. So
So you
I haven't told you this, but I've hated your stat about they've had it's been a one score game going into the fourth quarter. That is
what is it?
that is a stat though. The
What
last minute. I don't know the record. I'm not going to talk about it.
it's so it's they played 16 SEC games since the start of 2021. 11 of the 16
Yeah.
were one score games in the fourth quarter. And that even includes like Arkansas because Milroe has that run right
Right.
at the start of the fourth quarter. But yeah, I mean that
God.
so we don't need to keep talking about that argument because ultimately I don't think that's what the playoff comes down to. But what you kind of realize from watching
Yeah.
the show tonight is the way that this is set up, this could all be decided by the end of Friday night.
Yeah, I know. It will be.
Like
I mean, like USC's not losing to Utah.
I think they're going to avenge that. And I'm as pro Utah as it gets, but I think they're going to avenge
Yeah.
that with how well they've played down the stretch. I mean, if Utah wins that game, which would be the most Pac-12 thing ever to
Oh
find
my
the way
God.
to get out of the play, like that would be just like
Yeah.
what they did 3 years ago. If that happens, then Ohio State slips into that spot at 4 probably. I think those 3 teams
Yeah.
are already in. I don't like even if TCU gets blown out by Kansas State, they just put Kansas State at number 10. They like Kansas
Like
State.
that it was like, well, and by the way, how did South I'm saying this strictly because of how it affects Bama. Texas, I've never seen a national brand just bob up and down on the water in one spot. Just 19 to 21 the entire year. Like they were not they didn't go anywhere. And like that's they had like an overly impressive win against Baylor, but like when I saw South Carolina ahead of Texas, I don't even disagree with that. I was shocked and it was like it was, just
2 wins. 2 wins against
all the
current
things.
top 10
Yeah,
teams.
for sure, man. Like I think that I don't know if the committee is sold on TCU. I think they put Kansas State there because it's convenient. It's about damn time because like all season long they've just like they've shit on like almost everything they've done. It was like, well, the games are just so competitive. And like, you're welcome.
Yeah, they're fun, dude. They're addicting, man. The fire drill field goal at the end of that Baylor game was
Oh my
incredible.
God. Yeah,
That should be how overtime's decided.
Yeah, that actually be pretty good. No, like in fact that like I came away most impressed with the Texas win because you've heard nonstop about their defense. They give too many points. These come from behind, close wins. It can't last forever. And they, I look up and it's a dominant defensive performance. So I think that they definitely deserve to be in. I wonder if the committee, with some of the stuff they've done, like I wonder if the committee, if TCU does get blown out, I think that they will put Ohio State in because you're talking about Ohio State, Georgia, and Michigan, and then USC as the playoff. Like that's gonna make so much money.
But who would they? So all right. So here's interesting. We're getting into the hypotheticals now because this very well could be decided so quickly. So let's say TCU does get blown out by Kansas State. I think TCU would fall to no worse than 4 because there's still a 12-1 team that has a lot of these wins against the AP top 25. Like TCU has 7 wins against Power 5 teams with bowl eligibility, which is really good. That's really good.
They beat 4 ranked teams in a row.
Yeah, and obviously like the rankings change and stuff. Like Oklahoma State's kind of crap the bed, and Kansas the way that's. Remember when TCU was playing a college game day game at Kansas, and nobody was talking about TCU, and it was all about Kansas. And then Jaden Daniels goes down. Okay, so Jalen Daniels, not she. I'm thinking LSU. Okay, so if TCU were to lose that game, it could set up the Michigan Ohio State rematch in the semifinal. If they put Ohio State at 3.
You think so?
Maybe they would.
This always confuses me because you can't leave TCU at 3 if they get like beat, and especially beat badly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen just because like I would like TCU to just put. I'm not saying I hope they make the national championship. I would love for Georgia to just curb stomp a Big Ten team. Like part of me I pulled for Ohio State on Saturday. That's how much I hate this Big Ten. Yeah. Did not go well.
Wow.
Yeah,
bad timing.
Okay,
so if this playoff field holds, if chalk holds, and I realize I'm talking to a Bama fan here.
I can be objective.
I think you can. This point, I think, is important for college football. Having the likes of Georgia, Michigan, TCU, USC. Outside of Georgia, those three teams, 0-1 total in the playoff. You're leaving out Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma. Those teams have accounted for 21 of the 32 playoff berths. They've had at least two of those teams in every single year. As you try and make the sport national, and even Greg Sankey cares about that and having national interest in the sport, even if it spits out the same winner, having these teams that feel like they have a chance. There's something to be said for that, for the pageantry leading up to it. I don't know that it's going to yield the best playoff, but it's at least something that the sport can sort of sell, that it isn't just, everybody, it's just the entire Southeast region of the country dominating.
Right.
And you have these other teams that feel like they're important.
I mean, I was at that 2018 game. That sucked. That was like, for a lot of reasons, but even leading up to it, just like Bama, Clemson, but you're playing like a half a world away. And like, the year was like Georgia, Clemson, and I think it is better. Like 2020, I thought they took the easy way out by putting Notre Dame, Ohio State, Bama, and Clemson in, but like I never thought they weren't going to do that either. You know what I mean? Like from a national brand standpoint, it does make sense. I love the idea of USC being in there as much as I don't like, I'm okay with how successful they've been this early, because I did not see that coming. But like, and it gets a good conference, like you said. I think that for as much as we talked about, like for the first several weeks going into this, like of like what could possibly happen, LSU had the biggest collapse, I think, of potential, because the committee put them at 5.
Yeah,
that was shocking.
It was in part because, okay, you have the Bama win, and they, we talk about, they overlooked the Tennessee blowout, or the LSU blowout loss to Tennessee. But then they didn't overlook Tennessee's blowout loss to South Carolina. It's interesting to see the way that
so badly they run out of fireworks. That's a whole different level of losing.
Right. South Carolina ain't ready for that. They weren't. They will be now, maybe. Especially no Marcus Satterfield anymore. They're like, get all the fireworks. Get them on board.
He left like on his own.
It was mutual parting of ways, maybe, to Nebraska. Yeah, it made a lot of sense, though. I think all parties involved were like, yep, this makes sense. Let's go with that. That never happens like that. But yeah, I think that if we are trying to dissect, like, all right, what ultimately, what do we take away from this? Because I think a lot of the selection committee, their work is over. I mean, like, they might not watch.
It was like senioritis.
Yeah, might be. What do we take away from what they have shown us? I think based on what they did to Ohio State by putting them at number 5, which is, I think, the fair spot for them, they're saying, hey, you lose a blowout game like this, you kind of lose control of your own destiny to a certain extent. We've seen 3 teams make the playoff after losing 3 score games, 2 of which were actually Georgia teams, ironically enough, last year, and then 2017, and then 20 Notre Dame got into the field after getting smacked by Clemson in the ACC championship. They didn't deserve to make it. I thought A&M did, but whatever, that doesn't matter. So we take away that, and we take away, all right, you go undefeated in a Power 5 conference, we're still going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
You have to, and I tell you what, at some point, I hate to be this guy. At some point, we've got to figure out some like just uniform, universal, parallel way to have scheduling across like at least the Power 5 conferences. And it'll probably never happen. It'll probably never happen. But like, by the way, the Big Ten, I've always called them the Big 3 since I was like a kid, because it's just been, when I saw that all 3 of those teams, they hit the least amount of ranked teams out of any conference, and it was just the 3 of them, it was perfect. That being said, like, they got to figure out a way to either make it a little bit more, like, I'm just so tired of having the arguments like in the going into November, because it does work itself out, right? Like for the most part. But like when there's a year like 2017 and we like, I honestly don't know. I asked you this multiple times. I don't know how to even like look at the resumes sometimes, because I want to like objectively have like a 30,000 foot view on everything, right? Like, let's see like how we can objectively put these side by side and put the best teams in. And hopefully Bama's in there, but let's put the best teams in. Like, do you put the ranked teams if they beat them, they were ranked at the time, or is it now when they're ranked, or is it like there's just so many things I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't know what to do.
I would much rather do by how that ages, because then we get into A&M trying to tell Jimbo Fisher trying to tell us why they beat a top 15 Miami team, and I ain't here for that. All right, I'm not. I can't do it. I can't. So like it matters to a certain extent. To a certain extent, I definitely think there's a case for like LSU 2019 beating 7 teams at the time who were
7
ranked
top
inside
10.
the top 10. Like that matters, especially with how backloaded the schedule was. It's like, all right, yeah, that is impressive to me, but I still think that we look at this and try and figure out what in the world the selection committee is going to do. What are they going to do when it gets to 12? Their job's actually going to be a lot harder. They're going to have a lot more resumes to actually have to sit there and break down, and they're going to piss off a lot more people, because now we kind of have accepted, okay, we've seen this week over week. We know where this team's ranked. We know where this team's ranked, and we can kind of come to grips with it. But with the 12, man, it's going to be all over the place, and they better not do those. They're going to do the ranking show. They definitely will, but they're going to piss off people way more than they already do.
I honestly, it this year more than any, it really, there wasn't a time that they were explaining something, and I genuinely felt like, and I'm not talking about Bama, I'm saying in general, I genuinely felt like they were telling me something that they watched, or like it was like a valid point they were making.
I stopped listening to that.
It's awful. Every time they talked about anything, it came off as not like they knew what they were talking about, or like they were making valid points. It was, like we're doing this because it's convenient for us, and this entire thing is like theater.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what this comes down to. But we still watch, we still talk about it. We're still interested.
We did 22 minutes tonight. All right, I gotta get some ice cream. Tell everyone about the podcast for this week, man. And you're gonna be in Atlanta upcoming on Saturday. So
I mean, you're going to be in Atlanta too, because you live there. So, I mean,
you don't know that, bro. I'm a tumbleweed.
Yeah. We have lots to talk about. Just a couple of things to talk about. We're going to talk some Hugh Freeze in the pod as well.
Oh my God.
I heard he got a new job. Might be discussed.
I just want them to have a coaching search every offseason.
It would be majestic. What would the buyout be? It'd have to be a set buyout, like just $15 million every year to the coach.
There was like a recurring purchase, like an Apple, iTunes. There was one thing I wish they would have done yesterday, because they're paying him $6.65 million. And I just really wish in some strange universe that they would be like, we're paying him $6.66 million and just done everything possible to have bad optics and lean into it. Just two double birds. We don't give a shit about any of this. It'd also be really bad.
I hired them a PR consultant, so they've got it all figured out. They're going to be fine. Yeah. Interesting. Really
I learned what vetted means.
Yeah. Vetted. Big word. So we'll be talking about that, talking about some playoff stuff, talking about SEC championship. Hester's going to join as well, which, any excuse to talk to him. So, it was set that up before LSU decided to puke on its own shoes, get their cornflakes pissed in by A&M. That's a fun episode coming up.
We should do a season ending recap or some of the best moments, because we don't ever get to talk about that unless it's right after the Monday morning meetings. But there are some moments I thought about this weekend where I would just like A&M storming the field and getting to end on this positive note. And the Satterfield thing, the moment I heard that, I almost texted you. It just reminded me of Jim and Dwight were just disguising their voices and getting Packer down to Tallahassee as fast as possible. Just just get them down there, check out the Harry Potter world. So,
it's lovely down
here. All right,
there.
that's all for today, man. I'll hit you up later this week, and we'll get a beer, something like that in Atlanta, and we'll see everyone else later.
Happy Arbor Day.
God dang it.